I've heard some absolutely wild HOA stories in my life. All the manicured lawns cut within an inch of their life, the endless fights over the correct shade of beige, the neighborhood dictators with nothing but time and a clipboard, but none of them hold a candle to what went down on my street not too long ago. And let me tell you, when your story ends with a failed dawn raid, a busted lock, and the HOA president facing off with a real live sheriff, my brother, no less, well, that's the kind of thing you just don't keep to yourself. You got to tell someone, you know what I mean? So here's the real kicker. I moved out to Willow Creek Estates, looking for some peace, some quiet, just a patch of green, and a place where nobody was going to tell me my mailbox was 3 millimeters too tall. Retired journalists seen it all, wrote about half of it. I just wanted to put my feet up for once. But then along came Beatrice Maxwell, or B, as she liked to call herself, as if being Queen Bee of the HOA was a real job. She came in like a whirlwind, all leopard print and hair sprayed within an inch of its life, driving around in a golf cart with more flags than the 4th of July parade, and a yappy little dog that looked like it could file its own violation reports. At first we all thought, okay, she's got a lot of opinions, but how bad could it get? You'd think after all those years digging up dirt as a journalist, I would have recognized trouble sooner. 3 months in, there's a notice in my mailbox. Blurry photos of my wildflowers, official letterhead, a list of everything wrong with my yard. Apparently my marigolds weren't HOA approved. I tried reasoning, quoted the bylaws, even threw in a dictionary definition of reasonable for fun. Didn't matter. She just pursed her lips, sniffed like she'd caught a whiff of joy, and said, "Rules are for the guidance of wise men and the obedience of fools." Yeah, that happened. Then B built herself a little army, the Community Standards Adherence Committee. We called them B's Bulldogs, but to most folks, they were just the HOA cops. You had Gerald, her nervous sidekick, Stan, who looked like a human weasel and was always peering over fences, and a couple other folks who seemed thrilled to have a taste of power. They patrolled with clipboards, handing out violations for everything from a crooked trash can to a garden hose that wasn't coiled in a visually pleasing manner. My brother Mark, the county sheriff, happened to be staying with me while his place got new floors. He'd just shake his head when I'd get another citation. "These folks need a hobby or a real job," he'd grunt. B knew exactly who Mark was. She even welcomed him with stale muffins and a speech about parking privileges for guests. I think she believed having a cop in the neighborhood made her more legit, but the reality was coming for her like a freight train. The notices ramped up. One day it's the unapproved curvature of my stepping stones. Next day it's the color of my welcome mat. I started a folder labeled B, Old Habits Die Hard. I saved every email, every photo, every silly violation. Mark would glance at my stack and smirk. "You building a case or a bonfire?" I started chatting up neighbors, sweet Mrs. Gable, who made apple pies and kept her blinds drawn, Tom, the retired engineer with a knack for details. Turns out B's Bulldogs weren't just picking on me. Tom got fined for his kid's basketball hoop. After a decade, Mrs. Gable's bird bath was an unauthorized satellite dish, you name it. Then B crossed the line from petty into downright dangerous. She pushed through an emergency directive, said that due to anonymous reports of fire hazards and internal modifications, the committee could now conduct immediate unannounced inspections inside any home they deemed at risk. No court order, no actual emergency, just B's word. When I showed Mark the flyer, his jaw set. "That's not just dumb, it's illegal," he said. He told me to write a formal letter, certified mail, the whole 9 yards, stating if anyone tried to enter my home without a warrant, it was trespassing, period. Did B back down? Not a chance. I got nothing but a smirk the next day. But that night Mrs. Gable called me, voice shaking. She'd overheard B plotting a safety sweep at my house the next morning. She's really going to try it. I told Mark, who was just getting off shift. He said, "I'll be there. Let them make the mistake." I checked my locks, set up cameras, and waited. Sun wasn't even up yet when I heard tires on the gravel. B, Gerald, Stan, and a big guy I'd never seen before creeping up my walk in the dim blue dawn. I flicked on the porch light, opened the door. "Morning, B. What brings the committee out so early?" She launched into her script, waving that ridiculous flyer. I let her go on, all the while recording every word. She declared they had the authority to enter. I told her no chance, not without a judge's signature. That's when it got real. The big guy Gary pulled out a lock-picking kit and started working the deadbolt. My heart was pounding. I raised my voice. "Mark might want to come down, looks like we got company." For a split second they froze, thinking I was bluffing. Then Mark's voice, big gravelly, echoing from the upstairs window. "What in the Sam Hill do you think you're doing down there?" Bee and her crew looked like they'd seen a ghost. Mark stepped out, badge in hand, eyes steely. "This is private property. Unless you have a warrant, you're committing a felony." Bee tried to sputter something about community safety. Mark shut her down stone cold. "What you're doing is attempted breaking and entering. Trespassing. You want to keep going?" Suddenly, nobody wanted to keep going. Stan looked like he might puke. Gerald was sweating through his clipboard. Gary dropped his tools. Bee tried to play the misunderstood leader, but Mark wasn't having it. He made them apologize, then took statements and not so subtly mentioned criminal charges were still an option. Word spread fast. My cameras caught everything. Bee with her lock guy Mark's take down the works. I didn't need to post it online. Just the thread of the footage kept Bee rattled. By noon, half the neighborhood knew. Turns out everyone had their own Bee file. Tom and I started digging through old HOA records with Mark and Mrs. Gable quietly backing us up. Then Carol, another board member, slipped me emails. Proof Bee had ordered her bulldogs to target folks she didn't like with threats and bogus fines, trying to force people to move. With Mark's help and a sharp lawyer named Ms. Albright, we called a special HOA meeting, packed house, standing room only. The evidence, the video, the emails, the money spent on Bee's own yard, the emergency directives made up on the fly, it was a slam dunk. Folks stood up one by one and told their stories. Mrs. Gable found her voice too, said, "You made me afraid of my own home." The whole room erupted in applause. The board voted Bee out. She slunk out behind her lawyer, looking for the first time like she realized her reign was over. It didn't stop there. We cleaned house, brought in a new transparent board, rewrote the bylaws so no one could pull that stunt again. Bee, under legal pressure and community scorn, sold her house for a loss and skipped town. The DA pressed charges for embezzlement and harassment. She cut a deal, paid a fortune, got probation. The HOA Cops Committee was officially disbanded and everyone started breathing easier. Now my porch light can be whatever color I want, my flowers grow wild, and the only folks stopping by are neighbors looking for a good story or a slice of Mrs. Gable's pie. Mark drops by for coffee, sometimes grinning. That's the most satisfying arrest I never had to make. The real lesson, power, no matter how petty, will always try to overreach if you let it. But a few determined folks and maybe a conveniently placed sheriff can still set things right. So what's your craziest HOA story? Drop it in the comments. Let's see whose neighborhood can top mine. I'll be reading.